Welcome, everyone. My name is Teri Bybee, and I challenge, inspire, and empower women to take joyful risks in order to release doubt, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and then be able to create extraordinary outcomes dealing with their challenges. And today I'm interviewing Marianne Varner, who is a longtime friend and amazing woman. And I feel like she's going to have a lot to share with us today. So, Marianne, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Marianne Varner. Yes, as Terry said, we've been friends for a long time. I am currently retired. I retired May of 22, um, but I still am involved in some leadership things through my PEO chapter. I'm president, and yeah, still kind of keep involved somewhat in my previous career. So,
Once a leader, always a leader. I have a
yeah,
feeling. Could be
yeah,
the leader of
and
the
go away.
whole group, who knows? All right. So, let's just talk a little bit more about your background, the titles that you've held, the work that you've done, and what you're doing now.
So I was an educator for 36 years. Um, that entire time, I did stay in the classroom because I really didn't want to leave it. I taught math at the high school level, several different areas, anywhere from advanced geometry through algebra 2, all sorts of classes to work with kids, struggling kids, advanced kids, taught it all. But then I also got to be part of the development of the Arlington ISD STEM Academy, from the planning to the actually implementation of the program we wanted to put in place. And then I eventually became one of the coordinators, and that's how I finished out my year or my years teaching as both teaching and coordinator of the STEM Academy.
And would you, for those of us that may not have as much of a grasp, would you explain what the STEM Academy is?
So STEM is the current buzzword in education that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And our purpose was research was showing that kids would enter the STEM pipeline in college, but they didn't have the background and stuff they needed to stay in those fields. And as our population is aging and the baby boomers, and I guess the Gen Zers, Terry and I are right on the bubble of that, um, are retiring, we weren't having a pipeline to replace. So that was the reason for the STEM Academy. They're all over the United States now in various school districts. There are blueprints at state levels on how to put them together. We did a lot of research and kind of came up with our own plan. Um, and that's been so far pretty successful. The 10th class is now in place in our program. So,
That is so amazing. So we're probably gonna come back to that, but
okay.
looking at your kind of your career overall, everything from the beginning to where you are
Mhm.
today, really,
Yeah.
what inspired you to take joyful risks in your career?
Honestly, I will be honest. I was in an engineering master's program and did not love it. Partly, I don't think I had the background and foundation to be successful in it. Um, and I really wasn't in the right field for me. And I kind of fought what I was good at, which was teaching. And in college, my on campus job was teaching through Upward Bound. And I taught my during my undergrad years, I taught in the program during the school year as a tutor, and then worked in their summer camps as a teacher and counselor. And but I was never going to be a teacher because my mother was a teacher, and there was no way I was going to be a teacher. But teaching is one of those things that it's kind of a calling. It's in the genes, and after a while, you can't fight it. Um, and It's funny, my risk a lot of times comes from, I think, God speaking to me through a 2x4. Um, and so when I decided to finally check out teaching, I took a class in the summer. I was short a credit for graduation, so I took an education class and thought, okay, let's see what this looks like. And it was like, oh, well, after engineering classes, I was shocked that people actually got a grade for that because it was like I fit, it was perfect, it was awesome. Um, but I still wasn't sure. So I did some substitute teaching. And then I actually also interviewed for some corporate jobs, but literally walked in a suit, looked at those cubicles, and got claustrophobic. It was just like, no, I just can't do this. Um, so I substitute taught, figured if I could survive substitute teaching in middle school, I could probably handle actually teaching.
Yeah, trial by
And
fire, I would imagine.
yeah. And so when I went to the university to see what it would take to get a certification, I literally walked in on the last day of a grant program that I didn't know was there, that was for people who already had an undergraduate degree, which I did in math. And it paid for tuition, books, and everything. And you could get certified in one semester.
Wow. So that,
Yeah.
with what you'd said a minute ago, so maybe a little bit of a God wink there, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was like, and there was like, here, fill this out, you're in. And yeah, I mean, it was like, okay. And I never really looked back, and I could tell I had found my place and my people was when I started teaching. Um, yeah, and I started in the middle school, was in middle school, junior high. That was back in the day when ninth grade was still in the junior high, and I taught eighth and ninth grade for 11 years, and then moved to the high school when the ninth grade became part of high school, and was there 25 years. So I was total of 36. But yeah, it was one of those things. I didn't, I was taking the risk to start exploring it, but then it was like, man, I walked in that door and they were like, here, this is perfect. And yeah, so
That's where you got a glimpse of your divine blueprint, right? That the plan
yes,
for your life that
yeah,
you didn't even know
yeah.
beforehand.
I did not know. It was like, I remember I was newly married and I came home and I was like, so they have this program and it's free, and it is, and it was like, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Very cool. And it's interesting because again, we've known each other for a long time, but I'm still learning things about you. So that's pretty cool as well. So when you think about risks you've taken, and
Mhm.
it could be what you've already spoken about, or things that have
Mhm.
happened through the years, what
Yeah.
do you think is one or two of the most, let's just even say one, what do you think is one of the most significant risks you've taken? And what was the outcome for that?
For me, probably, I mean, all along I took risks in the fact, like I I sought out workshops to go through. Education has kind of changed in the fact that districts are kind of providing their own um, PD, which is professional development for teachers, and it's all more of, how to teach, how to manage all the stuff that you should have gotten in your college classes to become a teacher. And they're doing more alternative certification. And so I'm giving you some background.
Mhm.
They're doing more alternative certification, so districts are now having to supplement more of what you would have gotten in a traditional education degree. um, but I always sought out, I wanted to learn more to be a better classroom teacher. So throughout my career, there were more workshops and opportunities for teachers to do that. So I really like teaching the advanced kids and the lower level kids, but I always sought out like going to college board um, trainings, which College board was just coming into play when we were in high school. Advanced placement classes and stuff, they were just starting to trickle in to Shawnee Mission at that time. I was the first student in our high school to take the advanced placement world history test. It was the only one that actually took it. So I went to advanced placement workshops in math. Would seek those out on my own to go to. I did a lot of TI calculator training. I was trained on almost every TI calculator current, and I would go and take summer workshops for a week. And then my husband, God love him, I'd come home and I'm like, look at this calculator, look at it. And he'd be like, I love you, but really seriously, don't go through all that. That's great. I'm glad you're having fun. So a lot of it was seeking out and then applying it and not being afraid to tell colleagues, hey, I went to this, let me show you this cool stuff. Let's do it. Trying stuff in a class with kids. Just, to do things, to have fun. Probably my most significant was how I ended my career was with the development of the STEM Academy. I felt especially that first group that came in that knew nothing about us. We knew nothing about them, but I felt a real obligation to provide them the best that they could have, because as much as we were taking a chance on them, they were taking a chance on us. And for those students and their parents to have the best experience that they could have at a public school level.
Just thinking about that whole outcome piece, do you have any results, let's say, from that first group that went through, or any that
So the first group,
follow?
we had 2 girls walk into MIT
Oh, so cool.
out of that first group. Pretty awesome, and did really well. Both have graduated MIT and are pursuing fields. One actually got her electrical engineering degree from MIT and is now going into law school.
Wow.
So we've had that. We have 6 or 7 kids at Stanford. One of our students was listed as Fortune 500 most successful teens to watch. With her, she has her own business. She started her own mentoring program that has now gone national.
Wow.
We have had 5 Amazon scholars in a row out of the high school. My own son just graduated with a mechanical engineering degree from UTA. He had a full ride scholarship. We have kids at the Naval Academy. I think that's the only academy right now.
Those are some pretty
Stanford,
amazing,
MIT,
significant
Harvard,
outcomes.
Yale, so we've had the Ivy Leagues, but then we've also taken kids and put them we did a dual credit program with our 4-year university here, and we have a lot of them that start their junior year and are staying through, getting full ride scholarships and going out and doing great things. So yeah, we've
That's a
got a lot of
beautiful thing.
success. Yeah.
And I can only imagine how proud you are to have been part of that.
Oh, super proud. And the people that are following me now, they have now started, and we actually have a program where kids are designing experiments to send up to this International Space Station through NASA. So,
Wow.
it's still evolving. And I think one of the cool things was it wasn't about the teachers driving this, it was about the students wanting to do stuff. So we've had a solar car team. We've had a what is it called? Roboboat. They have competed the last 2 years in Florida, being one of 2 high schools competing with MIT and Cornell and international universities from like Czechoslovakia and all over. So while we started it, we've really empowered the kids to seek and get out there. And yeah.
As
So
you and your team as leaders, really creating leaders,
right.
which is powerful for us, knowing that those that are following us actually have some true sight of
Mhm.
they can do with the world, right?
Right, absolutely, and, if you wanna do it, but we trained them. They had to present to us, and it was great. Now you get to present to the superintendent of schools, and so, it was developing them and helping them get to that point, but we had to do it too. So, we had to present while the district wanted the STEM academy, we designed it, and then we had to make a big pitch to the school board. I mean, we all had phases where we all had to get out there and yeah. So, but it was a team effort. It was not a solo endeavor by any means.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah.
And though, of course, there are times that as leaders we can really stand up and create extraordinary
Right.
outcomes individually. Oftentimes it's
Right.
a team because it's bringing in all the different
Mhm.
mindsets and idea brokers and um, action takers, right? That come all
Yeah.
together to make something happen.
Right. Right. Mhm.
So through all this, I mean, you've obviously challenged yourself many, many times.
Yeah.
How do you overcome self-doubt or fear when you're taking these risks?
Uh, you know, there would be some of it. Some of it was fall back and punt. I had a great partner as coordinator. We were co-coordinators. We were a good yin and yang. It was probably the best professional partnership I ever had. And, her when we each of us would have our freakouts over different things. So if I was stressing out, she could calm me down, and then if she was stressed out, I'd be like, "Oh, we're fine." Her big deal was, did anybody die today? And was there blood involved? And if no and no, okay, we're good. Take a deep breath. We'll go forward. Yeah. So that was, sometimes you just have to be able to put in is step back and put it in perspective. What is really, and then some days it was go home, shelf work, and just focus on your family. Focus on what is making you happy today. Um, and schools, everybody hears schools right now. School used to not be a political platform or a major news story, and now you know everything in schools are major news stories. Industries have been built in the last 30 years over education that wasn't there. I mean, it used to just be textbooks, but it is now education is its own ecosystem and industry outside of the public school system. So, a lot of that has brought stress into the teaching field. And I will tell you that there would be days when I was really frustrated and just going in and closing my classroom door and teaching my kids and centering myself. That would be how I would center it. And then I would also build my happy school in my brain of what I thought would make the perfect school environment. And sometimes I would include my kids in that conversation. Guys, I'm building my happy school. So what do you think about this? And oh, I like that. Let's do, so we would build our happy school and it would just kind of shut out all the noise. So,
And there
yeah.
is a lot of noise. I mean, you're right.
Mhm.
Part of it, with the technological advances of the internet, which was
Oh, yeah.
when we were, first getting into the whole adulting world of business.
Did we even have the internet when we
I was on it first time after college in my
Right,
job.
right, it was
Yeah.
after college, yeah, yeah.
So the fact that we as adults, as well as all of our kids,
Mhm.
are inundated with
Oh, yeah.
the outside world and with lots of, black and white and, just everything
Oh, yeah.
that is, absolutely a huge part of the stress I think all of us have
Mhm.
in any way,
Right.
shape, or form that we show up in the adult world.
Mhm.
So you kind of touched on this, but how do you balance all the risk taking that you've done through your career itself and your personal life?
It was tough, I balanced sometimes you just kind of did it and you didn't think about it a whole lot. Um, my career got harder as it went. There wasn't as much emotional space taken up with it when I first started teaching. It was easier to come home, put it away, and focus on family. As more demands came on teachers, because now they're training you on the social emotional side of kiddos. So not only are you worrying about the social emotional of your own child, now you're being trained on how to deal with the social emotional of 160 bodies in your room. That really pulls. That's why a lot of people are leaving, is just it's just the emotional fatigue of dealing with all that. um it was I took on more roles as my kids got older. So when my kids were younger, a lot of it I was like, no, I can't deal with that stuff because I got my own kids to raise. And those demands were there. As I got older, my children are 11 years apart. So I had kind of two only children. Um, so my son went through his high school career with me. He was the second class entered into our academy. So he was kind of with me for the ride. But he saw that it was harder for me to shut it off, but it was easier to balance it because he was with me on that journey. Um, yeah. And my husband, it would ebb and flow. Like when my work was more demanding, his actually wasn't as demanding. So that was helpful too. Um, but it was hard, and especially towards the end. Um, Partly why I retired was that I had a good ride and I was tired. Um, and it took me a good 6 months to a year just to kind of unwind from the pace I was at.
Oh, I imagine.
So yeah.
Especially with you being kind of the go-getter that you are. I mean, the fact that you were constantly doing things to advance yourself, to grow yourself,
Mhm.
and then in turn,
Right.
the projects
And
that you chose.
Right. And I chose those projects. Now, one of the things I didn't do was I did not seek higher degrees beyond a bachelor's. I have some graduate coursework, but I did not pursue the master's. Lots of reasons. Part of it was life. Part of it was just I I didn't need a master's to be in the classroom doing what I was doing. So if I was going to get an advanced degree, I wanted it to be able to do something else, to move into counseling or into administration. And I never really wanted to move into administration formally, even though I did at the end. I was administrator without being officially an administrator. Um, and then I was looking at a master's in mathematics teaching, and actually seriously considering it when my husband's job got real demanding and he was traveling a lot. And what I wasn't willing to do was to be that person working on a master's, being a single parent because he's traveling a lot, and have that take the toll on my son and my daughter who was in college. So I just it didn't seem important. And honestly, I didn't need it. About the only thing it would have definitely advanced, given me more knowledge, but I was gaining that through my own stuff. It would have made it so in retirement, I could maybe teach at the junior college level, but I'm good. I'm good. So
So again,
yeah.
the divine plan is working out just fine.
Yeah, it was the divine plan. Yeah, it wasn't where I was meant to be.
Uh,
So yeah. Mhm.
what advice would you give other women who are hesitant to take risks?
I think you just have to look at the balance, because I can say that there's been some times where maybe I should have risked more and have missed opportunities. Um, but I can say I don't have a lot of professional regrets at all. Um, I think you have to look at it and just weigh it out. I've seen over time, I think where we get pulled is in the you can have it all and do it all. I know you can't. You've got to make choices and be okay with your choices. Um, I see a lot of toll taken on our kids because our families, we have both partners pursuing their careers and their professional part, but somebody has to be there in whatever partnership. One is going to take a secondary role in their career to be the primary role in the kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, um, my brother's family is a prime example of that. They're both doctors, but he chose a specialty that brings in more money, and she likes the research aspect. So they've been willing to take the lesser salary from her, and she's more available for the kids. And he's now, it doesn't really have to do with their gender, it has to do with the specialties they chose. Um, and you know, because of our more nurturing gender being female, it does tend to be the woman who a lot of times takes that role of the kids. Um, and I think that's where we need to say it's okay. I think we need to kind of get back to more focus on the family. Um, because if you're choosing to have children, you're choosing to raise them. And
We hope.
as an educator, what I've seen is that when, when they get to the point, great schools have them, I can go pursue my career, I can do this, I can do that. That's really kind of a falsehood. So I think your risks have to be in what are you willing to, what's the divine plan? What are you willing to live with? But I think that you can have it all mentality is not necessarily true.
Yeah, I
You
think,
have choices.
yeah, when you think
Mhm.
about even and I don't remember the name of the song, but the bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that was kind of
yeah.
a big thing when we were growing up, right?
It was, and it was the women's empowerment song and all this stuff. Okay, well, if I'm bringing home the bacon, somebody else better be frying it up in the pan. I mean, it was the you can do it all, you can, and I think, and I understand because you wanted more and you wanted to do more, and we absolutely. But at some point when children come into play, and there's a lot of families where the woman's had the kids, but then she's gone on and dad stayed home and taken care of, or he's taken a lesser job role. Um, one of our assistant principals, she has special needs children, and he actually is the one staying home, and she was moving up in administration and stuff. So it's a balance, and I think that's, I don't know if it's necessarily true, it's just a woman thing. I
Right,
think when
right.
when you choose to have a family, you all need to have the discussion who is raising and who's going to be, because I think that's been some of the biggest change. Because when you and I were growing up, our parents were just starting, the moms were just starting to work
Yeah,
and
yeah.
be out of the house. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
now anymore with just the cost of living. I mean, literally
Oh yeah,
cost of living.
you can't afford to have somebody stay home. Now you've got to have both people working just to be able to afford
Housing and
the
food and
everything. So, you've got to have the double income, but the question is, yeah, how do you balance it? It's a balance, and it's tough.
well, and
Mhm.
that's I think that's really key with what you're saying when it comes to looking at risk, that there's the determination of risk or to risk or not to risk, and is not
Right,
risking a risk in itself, right?
right.
So the balance between that, really having to look at all sides, and then the
Yeah.
balance of in the aspects we're talking about, career, personal life, and family. So in a
Right.
all
Mhm.
three things, right? It's not just career and personal, because
Right.
you may or may not have family, and your family may be in different levels of
Stages.
care,
Mhm.
stages of care
Yeah.
needed, etc.
And
But
and like I really took the time to really jump into it way more than I did when my kids were older, because they were at a point where I could do that. But when they were younger and 11 years apart kind of slowed me down more, because one was heading off to college while the other was heading into second grade. So,
right.
you know, it took and it's kind of a risk reward thing. But yeah, just being you got to look at all sides. Yeah.
And I think when we look at having it all, I mean, literally,
Hmm.
we look at having
Yeah.
it all, it looks
Uh-huh.
different than it did in that
Yeah,
song, right?
it
So
did.
having it all is as much about the the safety measures of, having the roof over your head, having them enough to more than survive. And then it's
Right.
the mental emotional aspects of what is all, because
Right.
like you're
Yeah.
talking about, if you spend all your time in your career and you lose touch with family, I mean, literally
Hmm.
lose touch with family, and your connection with your kids, your husband,
Right.
your significant other, etc.,
Hmm.
the emotional toll is perhaps not worth it. So what
Right. And
is
then do
having
you
it
really
all?
have it all? What
Right.
is all? All, yeah, is, yeah.
So
Is,
I liked the concept that you talked about of the I don't remember if this was the exact term, but your perfect happy school, perfect school. Was
yeah. Yeah.
you used? I think
Uh-huh.
it's important for us to consider in our life, right? If we forget to think about what the picture truly looks like, we
Right.
go down the wrong path when it comes to these risks.
Hmm. Right.
So
Right.
true consideration is what does that perfect day look like for you
Hmm.
when it comes to
Right.
those three things you're balancing: career, personal life, family,
Right.
or
Yeah.
two or eight. I mean, who knows what each individual might be balancing, but when you're looking at the
Hmm.
balance, what does that perfect day look like? So,
Oh, yeah.
a lot to consider for sure.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, kind of my final question, not
Okay.
kind this is my final set question. So, when you look at the role of joyful risk taking evolving, how do you see that role of that joyful risk taking evolving for women in leadership in the future?
I think you've, it's got to be joyful. It shouldn't be a beating what you're doing. It's got to make you happy and bring you joy or make you or fulfill you or make you there's got to be a purpose for doing it. Like, I really liked empowering kids and helping see them go places and or having that lesson where you learn about it in a workshop or in a class, and they're telling you, well, this is how it should work and look, and in your brain you're going, yeah, right, I'm going to do that with 15-year-olds. That's not going to happen. But when you actually do it and it works and it comes together, that's it's when you're sitting there or you're up. Like, gosh, my public speaking had to increase when I became coordinator, because I was talking, to an auditorium sometimes filled with 400 parents. Um, but you're up there and you're doing stuff and you're like, okay, I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable doing this. I'm not stressing talking to crowds this size or meeting with a superintendent or talking to a parent on the phone. I think it's when you hit that level of comfort and you feel like, yeah, I got this. And then there's days where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have this. Uh, but I think that's it. I think joyful leadership is when you feel comfortable in your skin and you're comfortable doing it, and you're not having to fight dragons all the time, and it's not a fight. You're good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, when we're thinking about the joyful risk, joyful leadership, we're really talking about, we've kind of referred to it a couple different times as we're talking, but it's really looking at what, as you said, what touches you in whatever way, whether it's
Right.
fulfillment, satisfaction, the joy of
Mhm.
discovery, the joy of
Right.
empowering others, etc. But
Mhm.
actually looking at, I feel that so many women, over the years, I'll just talk about my own journey and what I saw. So many women just took whatever they were given. And what I mean by that is, they were just looking for a job, just looking for
Right.
something to put food on the table,
Mhm.
and then just dealt with it. They were definitely a cog in the wheel. It wasn't about what fulfilled them. It wasn't about what they enjoyed. It was kind of an expectation in a sense of how to survive in the world. Right.
Right.
And so I think it's really key to consider moving forward, no matter what age, when you're moving forward, there might be times that we do have to take that cog in the wheel job to get to the next
Right.
stage.
And not every day is wonderful in any job. Yeah.
Even in the best jobs.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So just being able to take that into consideration, I think is really key. And I so appreciate um, you bringing that to the forefront. So overall, I just really want to thank you for sharing your thoughts about risk and your own journey, and the insights that you shared, I think, are really valuable, and I really appreciate that you were willing to meet with me today for this
Yeah.
interview for around
I
women who risk. Is there
I
any
enjoyed
other
it.
additional thoughts or questions that you
No,
have?
I think you just need to get out there. I'm a firm believer in following your passion, but I'm also a very practical person. And I will say my dad's words to me when I went to college was get a degree you can eat on. Um, and that's true. And that's kind of how I've raised both of my kids. I mean, our goal is to make self-sufficient people. So I do feel like we have kind of, not every kid needs to be an engineer or this or that, but the idea of it's a balance, and you have to find that follow your passion. That's that risk reward. Follow your passion and do what you want, but you still got to be able to be independent. And it's a fine line, and it's that was kind of what I would always work on, counseling kids, even with picking schools. Great, Harvard, how much money are they giving you? UGA gave you a full ride. You don't want
A bazillion
this
dollars
amount,
in debt.
right, for an English degree. I mean, seriously, because you're not going to come out and make, what are you going to do with it? So a lot of the conversation is, don't do something you hate and you're not good at and you don't have a passion for, but also you can kind of fulfill your passion sometimes outside your career if you need the money. So, my I have an artsy passion that was kind of hidden through high school that I've brought out more through life with my quilting and stuff like that. So, you know, your passion, it's a balance. So sometimes you you work to feed your passion, and then sometimes you're able to have your passion through your work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
on that wonderful thought, I
Uh-huh.
say thank you once again. And I so appreciate our time together. And who knows, maybe we'll be talking again.
I'm sure we will. Sounds good. Talk to you later.